What happens when water is exposed to EMF, or wireless radiation? Here's something you may not know. Water is conscious, and it responds vibrationally to whatever it is exposed to. At Omnia, we've done an experiment where we froze and photographed 3 samples of water. Water which was not exposed to EMF radiation, the baseline, looked like this. Water which was exposed to an EMF field, a 5G radiation field in fact, looked like this. And water which was exposed to EMF that is balanced by the Omnia radiation balancer looked like this. See the difference? Remember, your body is 70% water. And here's a special offer for the Journey to Truth crowd. Just enter the word TRUTH in caps at the checkout for your 10% discount.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Just a reminder to grab some tickets to our conference May 22nd through the 25th in Grafton, Illinois. Tickets are still available. On-site lodging is sold out, but that doesn't mean you can't come. There's plenty of areas and places to stay around there. And if you want to camp, there's plenty of camping on site. Tickets are available for $344. The meal plan's $250. Live stream tickets are $99, and day passes will be available as of April 1st for $88. All of that information is on the website, journeytotruthcon.com, and that link is below. And if you're looking to coordinate a ride or a room with somebody, you can get on the Telegram chat that's on the website and connect with people there, because there are people who are looking for roommates. Just to let you guys know, take advantage of that if you need to. Without wasting any time, we're going to jump straight in tonight. We are with Mary Beaver. You may have seen some interviews with her, on, I think with Dr. Sala and even James Rink. And she has an incredible testimony. She has an entire family history of military that ran in the family. So she was former Army for 8 years, and she has quite a story to tell. So welcome to the show, Mary.
Thank you for having me.
So we'll let you explain kind of your family history and how you ended up in the Army yourself. But I know it started with your grandfather and maybe even before that. So anything you could share with us to preface this would be great.
Okay. So yeah, we can, if we really wanted to dig down into family history, it goes back to, I can trace it back to 1111. We came from the King Neil's adopted bastard son's wheat. I don't know if anybody knows about that history, but King Neil was the first king of Ireland. So I was actually digging into all the treaties that our families had and these royal positions or lord positions. And there's always these fighters. But in the most recent American history, we've always just been some type of warrior, I guess you could say. And that's a huge thing for these fascists, or the others, if you want to call them. So my grandfather on my father's side, he was a sergeant in the U.S. Army, and in World War II, he infiltrated one of Hitler's stronghold generals, and it wasn't one of the processing camps where the Holocaust was taking place. It was a camp, and this information came from my great uncle on my mother's side, and he was telling me about that. So that kind of told me they're all connected, and they don't know they're connected, because you have the people way up here, and then you have us way down here who know nothing. We're just the pawns in their little chess piece, right? So, But he was telling me about all that, because every security clearance set I had to have while in the U.S. Army, they asked me about my father, and I was like, I don't know anything about him. So as we went, I learned from people in the military and the security clearances. And then after I got out, more started to divulge within my family about what he did. And I'm the only child of his that has a DD-214, and it's all confidential. So same as mine, you can't even get one. People disappear when they try to get a copy of mine. So it's kind of strange. But the SSP gene is like on both sides. So on his, but he had more of the majestic clearance because I'm in Area 51. And my other families, like my grandfather, was just more of the Masons, and my grandma on my mom's side was the Jesuit side, except for her uncle or her brother, which was my great uncle. He was the one that worked for the CIA, but he had a majestic clearance. I don't want to say God clearance because that's usually the aliens that run that whole majestic 12, but I'm considered to have what's called an archangel clearance, 1 Bravo. So, but I still, if I did see or interact with the aliens, I don't have those memories yet. I just remember seeing the green door that one time, and it was like,
yeah, so
it was huge.
so let's slow down just a little bit, and I definitely we're going to get into that green door, but I want to go back to what your grandfather discovered when they infiltrated the base, the German base.
That was the reverse engineered spacecrafts that Hitler was using and creating, and there was several different models. The ones that you guys see today on the exposures aren't even close to what was really down there. So there's a lot of other ones that nobody sees because those ones, though they were big, they were tall, right? But the doors are long and tall. So what was coming in and out of that? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So they had the longer, stealthier versions, and I've seen blueprints of a lot of them. But I didn't get to see what he saw. I was just secondhand knowledge from when I was working in disclosures. They told me little bits here and there because it was still like a puzzle piece. Oh, well, your grandfather did this and your father was a part of that. And, it was like they gave me crumbs. It's like, okay, so where do I look to find these pieces?
Did
And
he
it comes over time.
did he encounter any ETs, or was it just German scientists working on craft?
No, there was some reptilians that fled. There were other, in the description, it said there were other unknown life forms that they found bodies of. So there was like about 160 in the platoon. There was, at the end of that fight, there was only like 6 or 8 of them left. So my grandfather happened to have been one of them. He succeeded his first sergeant when he was shot down. So, and then they took out the general, and then what they found was horrific.
And what year was this?
In the 1940s, I'd have to get the article.
This time frame is fine. Yeah. So you said your father worked at Area 51, but his military records are restricted. Did I hear you right?
Yes. I do have a copy of the DD-214, but it only gives the history of his military, like where he went to basic, where he went to AIT, and stuff like that. And then the cover letter tells you, obviously, the rest of it is confidential. But he was the one that helped work on the train that went from Area 51 to Alaska.
So that's interesting. I haven't heard a lot of people. We know about the tunnel network. We know about the train, the maglev system. Would this be a maglev train, I'm assuming?
Yeah, it's the one. Well, it's not magnetics.
It's like air, like a tube, like a vacuum tube? Or no?
No, it was an energy source that held the train like a foot above the tracks. And yes, it had like speed. I don't know what I don't know what type of energy it was, but yeah, it wasn't magnetic.
Was it electromagnetic?
Nope,
Okay.
there was no magnets.
Really? So either way, it was a train that went from Area 51 all the way to Nebraska.
To Alaska.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or some kind of anti-grav tech. I mean,
well, that's just it. We hear about this tunnel network and this train system, but I think it just depends on the group that installs it, the level of technology that they have. So we have different modalities down there being used in different tunnel systems. So
Right. The more, I would say, advanced ones use that. The other ones would probably use more of the mainstream magnetic. It's not as fast, but no, this is like you could get to Alaska in maybe like 10 minutes.
Right. Yeah, it's really interesting. And then you said your uncle has ties with the CIA. Did I hear that right? Or was it your grandfather?
It's my my great uncle. He was the brigadier general that I was under while in my service of
Right.
the Army.
So we have plenty of family history within the military and these agencies. And obviously we know like the SSP thing is multi-generational and, you know, they target family bloodlines for a reason. So I guess this would be a good time to tell us how you ended up in the Army. I know, and also you were an ancient Phoenician expert, maybe? Is that a good way to put it?
Yes.
So I think that might have been one, from what I understand, that might have been one of the reasons that you ended up in the Army, because they wanted to use you for your abilities to translate and decipher that language. But I'll let you tell that story.
Okay, they didn't know that I had that language. It might have, I just put it in pictures when I was growing up as a child. I probably at the time didn't realize what I was writing. And when you do the application, they ask you, do you speak or write in any other languages? So I put Cherokee and Chickasaw, and I can transcribe ancient Phoenician. So when I got to AIT, they were going to have me tested, but I was sitting in limbo for about 3 months because they had to find 2 Native Americans that were in those fields that were willing to come and test me because they didn't have any experts. So I was in a program called LDAC, which is for unknown languages inside the Linguist Academy. So a lot of people don't know that even exists over there because it's just one of those things where random people like me were 1% that show up, right? So it's not the basic languages like Korean or Russian, stuff like that when you're in the regular part. So they have to find people to come in to test on that scale. And when I got to the Phoenician, I was sent out to Washington, D.C. and taken to Base 7. And that's where I was sat down. The Pope came out. I never met the Pope. And he had like scrolls and books and documents. And when I looked at it, I was like, it is in Phoenician. I was like, but I couldn't make out what it said. So the general got mad and he was like, well, you put on your application, you can read this. And I was like, well, I can, but this isn't the dialect I know. And that was the first time I realized there was more than one dialect. So he said, well, keep trying, I'll be back. And then he came back about 2 hours later, told me to stop, and that they were going to have a clerk from the Vatican come out with even older documents. And I was like, oh, okay. So they extended my stay in DC, and I got to stay at Hotel George. That was fascinating. The higher level penthouse, if you will. And so then I got to go back, and they had even older documents around the time of Christ. And so it gave all that kind of accountability. There was a lot of things I didn't get to see that were blocked. But yeah, again, never got to see the Pope because I guess they don't like people like me.
So it seems like even though they're sitting on all these documents and literature and tablets, whatever, they still don't even know what they say. They haven't translated them yet.
No. And that's kind of what bothers me about people saying they can read the Emerald tablets, because the ones you guys see where those were made, those are written in Paleo-Phoenician, which is not ancient Phoenician. Paleo-Phoenician and the Hebrews are the the Hebrews and the Jews are the Paleo and the Canaanite Phoenicians tribes. Those are the tribes of Cain. So not to insult anybody, but they were the tribes punished by God to be slaves to man because of the ultimate sin. So when they were able to, I guess, breed themselves to enough power to take out the other tribes, there were 14 tribes total. 2 tribes were assassinated to extinction by Cain's bloodline. And then they were able to coerce King David's whole kingdom to kind of follow him out of power struggle. And that's kind of where all that went. So they wanted to destroy the ancient Phoenician, They didn't destroy it completely. They hid most of the documents. They just destroyed it out of public.
Mm-hmm.
So for someone like me to pop up that knows it, at the time in 2008, I was told I was like the eighth, like sixth or eighth person that could transcribe those. But they don't want people to know about it, so they either get rid of them if they don't work with them.
Wow. Yeah, that's quite a story. So how long were you in DC? And can you tell me a little bit more about Hotel George? If it's interesting, I've just never heard of it.
Oh, it's just one of the ones where politicians go, or people from out of country, the royals from out of country will go to these elite hotels. And Hotel George is one of them.
Oh, okay. And that's where
I wasn't like in the penthouse or anything, but yeah.
Right.
Even it was like, I think like a $3,000 a day. I didn't pay for it, but
wow.
Yeah.
Did you know about that? I've never heard that. That's interesting.
I didn't until I got there.
Right. So
yeah, they have elite hotels out there.
Actually, so then how long were you out there? Were you able to translate or transcribe anything for them, or did you just not know?
Yeah, they just kept me an extra week. So what the Pope had stayed out, and they just sent a young, I don't know what you call those guys, friars or something, but they stay in the halls of knowledge, and they keep the stuff clean, tidied up, stuff like that. They're the keepers of all the ancient knowledge. So one of their little scribe guys came out. He was young, late in his 20s, very pleasant to talk to, very ignorant to his employers, obviously. So it kind of tells you that they keep secrets even from the people that work there before they're corrupted. I don't know if he ever was. That was the only last time I saw him. And he brought out the real scrolls, and then I was down there, I would say at base 7 for about 2 days, transcribing as much as I could. It was just enough for them, I guess, to figure out that I could do it. So
thank you for sharing that. So base 7, so that would imply that there's base 1 somewhere. And how does that system work? Is that underground 7 levels? Yes. Okay. And this is in DC. So you're 7 levels underground in DC.
No, okay. So if you have area 51, that's the 51st base starting from 1, right?
Oh, okay.
So that means there's literally like 136 underground bases, maybe more. So area just stands for area under the surface. So you have your bases that are above ground, and then you have your ones that are below ground. So a lot of them, they have different names.
Okay.
I just call them base, just because when you're on the inside, it's used differently. And we use different terminology up here to throw people off on purpose.
Sure. So, but you were in base 7, and that was somewhere near DC?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And base 1 is the capital.
Base 1 is the capital. That was my next question. Okay. Very interesting. So I know this is rewinding a little bit, but as a child, you mentioned that your grandmother was your handler. How did you discover that, and what did that look like?
At first, we're just being, I guess, shown the different ways of, I would say, alchemy, or what people would call witchcraft. So I was taught how to like harness the earth's energy. I could talk to animals, so in their own language, like literally. And I would walk with crowds of deer even during like rut season, and usually the males will try to kill you because they don't know that you're not, part of their pack. So I was bringing home weird animals, and like wild ones, never got bit, never got hurt. I learned a little bit of alchemic magic, if you want to call it that. And she helped nurture it. And then I learned about the sacrifice because we grew up on farm. So therefore, we learned to sacrifice the animals, and they did it in a way of, well, this is the harvest, and we got to give blessings to this, that, and the other. And that's kind of how it starts. And then when you're in these families, you normally get brought into the more severity of it when you're 17. And that was kind of scary because it's like a marriage contract to the Dark Lord,
Wow.
if you will.
So what ties did your grandmother have? Was she a contractor for anyone, or?
Yeah, she was contracted with the DoD to kind of eliminate the Native Americans.
Wow. I was just in New Mexico, Chaco Canyon, Canyon de Chelly, and we talked to a Native American elder who told us her firsthand story of that happening, their land being taken away and them being drug off to boarding school and stuff. And it was traumatic hearing it firsthand. We talk about it, but when you hear it firsthand, it's like unbelievable that people are capable of this. So,
right. And I'd even asked her, I was like, how could you do that? And she was like, well, it was before I knew I was Native American. I'm thinking, we're not Native American. We just grew up on the territory.
But like, even if you're not Native American, how can you do that? You know, it's like that
right.
shouldn't even be a factor.
Right. And it's just so they're called the anti-humanist group. And they do come from the bloodline of Cain, and they're, the more extreme reptilians, I suppose, and other alien fascists.
Wow. That's very interesting. There's an entire history in that area, ET history, that I know, like the mainstream history is straight BS, like straight up BS. When I was there exploring these sites, there was something much larger that happened here. But so that went on. And what year did you join the Army? How old were you?
It was in 2001. I was about 21 or 22. I tried to go sooner, but I'm a Norwegian, so like the Samoans, I have a heavier mass. So I was always like 10 pounds too heavy, and I'm like, really? I look amazing. Why can't I get in? And I did all this stuff, but they were like, oh, standards. There was no war at the time, so they were just looking for straight perfection. And then when September 11th hit, it was like anybody who could go. So I actually got a Samoan weight waiver.
Wow, that's horrible. It's insane.
Right? I'm like, but Norwegians don't have a weight waiver. I mean, we're big people, right? But yeah, so I was able to get a Samoan weight waiver to get in just a whole 10 pounds. And we went to Fort Jackson. That was fun. I got yelled at a lot because I have authority issues.
Sure.
And it's just for abuse of authority. But I also have Asperger's. So if something's not explained to me, I find I challenge it. Like, I need you to make me understand why we're here and why you're doing this. And so the recruiters don't obviously give you any information, just like, oh, it's going to be great. It's just a mind game. Just get through it. But when you're in there, it's like, oh my God, this is worse than a mind game.
Yeah.
So it's trauma-based education.
Yeah.
But it was great. I would probably go back there on vacation.
Right. So at what base did you see the green door?
That was base 7. All of the underground bases have a green door because they might have a black door. Some of them have a green or a gray, like a dark gray. It depends on what it is they do there. Area 51 definitely has a lot of green doors. 54, the same thing. They even have underwater, I would say, water tunnels. So submarines, they're submarine tunnels. There we go. Yeah. They can go through all the lands. Right. So I literally saw a ship going into a naval base. I filmed it on my phone when I was flying over the LAX. And here's this big black object just without any effort going through the water. And you can see these cargo ships lined up. This thing was just massive. The cargo ships were tiny compared to this thing, and then poof, just disappeared underground.
Wow. And then you saw this underwater from the air.
Mm-hmm. And I got it on my phone. I can send it to you. You're not going to see it very well, but it was because I was like, oh my God, is that real?
Right. Sure.
And I was rubbing my eyes because I'm like, no.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah.
So then you didn't know what was behind the green door. Like, that was just a mystery to you until somebody told you. Is that what happened?
Yeah, I got a high enough clearance. Like I said, I've probably been behind there, but they're not going to let you come back out with those memories, if that makes sense.
Yes, that makes sense. And it's like not a memory wipe, but a suppression of a specific part of your brain that remembers that. Yeah. So how did you end up finding out what was back there? Did someone tell you? Or did they?
Yeah, I got.
Did you ever inquire about it to anyone like on the base before you?
No, because when you're in the military, you're not supposed to ask questions. If you ask questions, you become a hazard, if that makes sense. But there was a point that I did start asking questions, and they entertained it for a little bit. And as I got higher up into the security clearances, I mean, I had crypto clearances, and then I had a majestic need to know, which was obviously the Archangel clearance. So I got to know about them. But again, I don't have the memory of actually going in there. I have been to certain levels of base 54 where I saw the giant. And that was part of my crypto clearance, not my crypto, but my majestic clearance that I got to see those because they're considered angels, if that makes sense. So, because they're bred with the Nephilim angel or the fallen angels. So, Archangel is still a clearance where you get to know about certain aliens.
Right.
So, the ones that actually run the world, like the God clearance, I never saw them. If I did, they were in some kind of like human form. And it was just one of those people you were like, I don't want to go around you. You're creepy. You might eat me kind of thing.
Right.
So I want to talk more about that giant, but not yet because I'm still on the screen door. Because I know on the thumbnail of this video for anyone who's watching is the patch that I guess the guards wear that say behind the green door. And there's like even an alien looking thing on the patch. If I got the right patch, but so like I guess this is where they would be reverse engineering stuff, keeping ET tech, genetic experiments, this type of thing will be behind these green doors.
Yeah, or just the civilian or the citizen life. Some of these bases lead down to cities where they live, normal. I mean, the movies tell a story. So Men in Black isn't exactly that far-fetched. I mean, they do have underground cities for the other life on the planet. So
ET cities.
Well, and so that's a misconception because a lot of these aliens are born here. So they're still Earthlings. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of them that come from out of our galaxy or anything like that. So when you talk about extraterrestrials, they're talking more about the Delta Quadrant, the Exo Quadrant and stuff like that. Those are ETs. So just to horizon that whole picture for you. But in our galaxy, we aren't considered aliens to each other because all planets are connected where we're not given that education here. So we can go to Mars if you wanted to. I mean, you could literally Google spaceports. They're actually on the map now.
Really?
Yes.
Well, that's something I got to do.
But yeah, look up spaceports in America. There's like, I think 8.
Yeah, we've had some people on the show identify like certain areas that might be a spaceport, but I had no idea that they were labeled on a map.
Well, they are now. I don't know when they were, but before they weren't, no. But I did look them up. So I won't ever talk about anything that can't be Googled. You might have to like really get into some stuff to find it, but yeah, that's a simple one. Because I don't want them coming after me for telling you guys something that's not already there. So that's how you get in trouble is when you're like, oh, wait, here, let me tell you this. And it's not ready to be exposed yet.
So where would one of these spaceports be off the top of your head?
We have a few like down in LA. I think maybe Texas. There's a few in the middle states. New York definitely has a spaceport.
I think there's one possibly in the Ozark area. That's just my own, but I don't know.
Right.
But it's not like any random person could just go there and expect.
No, you do have to have a black passport. Yeah.
Right. So it's still kept secret.
Right? I mean, you can apply for one. They're only $38,000.
Oh yeah. Only.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me go to the ATM.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, so I guess maybe these spaceports are underground somehow. They're obviously No.
They're in plain sight.
Are they?
No.
Are any of them like cloaked? Like
They might be on a military base. They could be cloaked. They just could be. They just could look like a regular airport, but you're not gonna realize. They might say that's the restricted section for like government officials because that's what they keep those for. So, I guess for example, like let's say there would be one in the Atlantic airport because it's so long. You're not seeing each until you're coming out of the plane. You don't really see every type of plane that's there.
right.
So there could be one right there in plain sight. And the only ones you're going to see going on there are certain types of military, and I would say the black and green uniforms, government officials, black suits, however you want to look at that. But those would be the ones that they go on there, and those are called spaceports.
Wow. And just hiding. I mean, I guess the best way to hide anything is in plain sight. I was, I was just thinking while I was out in the Southwest, there's caverns and cave systems that lead underground, but you could be standing right next to one. And if you didn't know exactly where it was, I mean, you just people could walk past it every day. They're just hiding in plain sight. They don't even need to go out of their way to fence it in or anything, because that would draw more attention to it.
Right.
So it just slipped in there with our infrastructure, or just hiding in plain sight out in the open in nature.
And I've heard some stuff is cloaked as well.
Yeah.
That you can't even see
Yeah.
it there.
That's called the veil of deception. So, yeah.
Did you witness any of that technology, the cloaking technology? You did?
Yeah, because when you're in the underground bases and you only have a certain clearance, they still cloak your eyes. So everybody down there looks human.
So that's how it works. So would that be done via some sort of frequency or technology it's like it does something to your visual cortex, so everyone appears to be human, even though some of them are reptilian?
I'm not sure how they do it now. I do know the old ways they used to put spray in your eyes, so it would kind of like illuminate your eyes from seeing certain things. But I think they have a certain way of doing it when you walk through like metal doors. It does have certain frequencies that stop you from seeing. It's kind of like at the airport, and I've talked about that before on James Rink. If you go through those scanners, they're scanning your memory, so you can't see the ships flying all over the place because they're there. So if you can get it away from going around that, then you can see the ships as plain as day.
And you can opt out of those machines, but they throw a big fit because they got to call somebody and they have to pat you down. But now I'm going to start doing it.
Yeah, I'm going to start doing it.
Yeah.
I used to have a friend who wouldn't go through it, wasn't awake at all, but he's like, dude, those things cause cancer. And he would always opt out of them.
Well, yeah,
right.
Right. Wow. So you mentioned in an interview you were shown interrogation videos, meaning our human military interrogating ETs. Can you explain what you were shown, what species you saw, and what that looked like, please?
So there's one that came out again that I can talk about. Others I can't because they're not out yet. But the one with the specific gray alien was a futuristic hybrid of humanity. I would say probably more into the what would you say, we're in the 2000s, so the 3000s. And so whatever's happening in this timeline is affecting all other future timelines. So Earth, and this is going to sound weird because we all see the NASA maps and stuff, but Earth is actually the cradle of humanity. We're literally in the circle. We don't rotate. Everything rotates around us. So, and that's part of the secret knowledge that the Jesuits and everybody else learn. That's what makes us such a high important frequency.
That aligns with some information Dolores Cannon that came through one of the sessions from her clients. They said the same thing. They said Earth is the center of the universe, essentially, and there's a mountain base within this planet that would be like the exact center that's been protected since the planet's creation. But anyway, go ahead.
So whatever happens here affects everything. I mean, the whole metaverse could just disappear and be erased from the book of the book of life, because we're the seed planet to the rest of them. And so the future was coming to the past to try to warn humanity, like, hey, don't do this. And of course, the government is the government is the government.
Mhm.
And they didn't believe about, time travel and stuff like that. But it's very difficult to time travel. And I'm going to expose a little bit more of that at um the venue in Las Vegas. So I'm trying to put together a visual because it's hard to explain it. So if I could visually show people what that looks like, it would be a lot easier.
Mhm.
So, but I mean, I was working with a feature group, trying to save people. They're still here, the Earth Alliance, but I was working with the United, oh gosh, what's it called? The UEE, which is the United Earth something. I'm sorry, I draw a blank.
Mhm.
But they were a future group that started here, which is working right now, the smaller group, and then they went into the other Earths, and we actually have 134 planets in our galaxy, not 9. So,
Yeah, I've heard
You mean solar system?
in our solar
no, our
system.
galaxy.
There's a lot more than that in the galaxy. 139.
130, well, just in our quadrant. We're the alpha quadrant. So yeah, it depends on the quadrant. So yeah, if you want to do the whole
Okay.
quadrant, yeah, you're looking at thousands of planets.
Okay. Well, you said 9, which would be our solar system. So
Yeah.
that's what made me think you're talking about the solar system. But
Right,
anyway.
but there's more in our solar system because the galaxy is the whole quadrant of the alpha, and then each planet it's a star is considered a planet if it grows to a certain mass. There's an X planet here, and I'd had somebody ask me about it, but it was actually brought from the X quadrant. So how did they get that here? I don't know.
Mm.
So
Mm.
they're still planets.
Right. Either way,
But
it's teeming with life.
Yeah.
And that's part of the whole reason NASA covers up space and gives us this fake footage. A lot of people
Mhm.
say, oh, it's because the Earth is actually flat. But no, it's because it's
No.
teeming with life. And if we were able to see what was really going on up there, their game's over, right?
right.
So,
And you can just go visit a spaceport. I'm just kidding.
right.
Yeah.
$38,000 passport or whatever.
Right.
So going back to the interrogation video, so you saw the one, I think it even leaked online. I think I might have seen the same one you're talking about.
Yeah.
But there are others out there and that you witnessed. I know you can't talk about all of them, but were there other species besides grays?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was like blue aliens from the blue planet, which is also in our solar system. And that's not Pluto, by the way. Yeah, it would be hard not to give out their names without, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that's okay. I mean,
Because what the government was doing was sending out distress signals. So they learned the frequency that the Earth actually sends out when the Earth is under attack. And Atlantis was the guardian a long time ago before it fell of the Earth. So if the Earth felt in peril, because the Earth is alive, and that's why nobody can own anything, because you can't own something that's living, right? So if the Earth felt like it was being like tortured or whatever, it sends out a universal signal. And Atlantis is the one that was supposed to come and assist. And it did for probably hundreds of thousands of years before Atlantis fell. So Atlantis was the reason it fell. One part of it was because it was doing the same thing as we're doing now.
Mhm.
It was being deceitful. It was poisoning the Earth.
Consuming
The
itself.
Technology. Huh? Yeah.
Consuming
So,
itself. Yeah.
correct. And it was too much. It didn't have anything to do with the population of humanity. We have so much land out there, but it's just the control of it and then the torture. And since we're made from, or men are made from the Earth's material, you guys actually are the frequency of the Earth. So when you start killing each other, that energy goes back into the Earth. So it's causing her pain. Does that make sense? Now we're made of you, so we're a secondary, but we were birthed through a goddess in order for us to be able to reproduce ourselves. So we only have second, and that's why when women are being tortured, it's not a huge frequency as in when men are being tortured.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I have so many questions I want to get into.
So that's where in the Bible where it comes from, Adam was made from dust, and then Eve was a rib from Adam. So that's where that comes from. It sounds like you said, dust, that would be like earth. So men came
There's
from
some
earth.
truth to it. Yeah.
It's like a
The earth,
metaphor for that. So it sounds like what you just said.
right.
Mhm.
Okay, so
Not literal, like it's taken.
this is something
Yeah.
you breezed by before in the interview that I'd like to get a little deeper in. You said they use future children as collateral to keep people in the programs, I guess, females in particular. You talked about miscarriages being planned. Can you go into that a little further? Because you kind of breezed by it, and I'd like to hear you elaborate on that.
So in the SSP, when they did jumps, men were usually the ones that did it because you guys have a stronger physique. You were easily upgraded. Women were not easily upgraded because we have what's called a healing gene in us. So we repelled a lot of the genetic hybridizations. And just from my knowledge, other people have different experiences. So I don't want to put that in everybody's mouth. During I would say the 1950s and 60s, they started bringing women in more, obviously, as the sex kitten program under the Delta program as well. And then they tried to hybridize super soldier sex kittens. And that was a really bad idea because when they started to reheal their own damage, they got their memories back and they actually went after their handlers and killed them. Because we could change appearance within minutes and nobody would realize it's us. So they were a danger. My group, they separated the sex kittens from the super soldier because you didn't want that, going after, they didn't want people going into the government buildings and stuff and taking them out, which we heard a lot on the news. People would walk in buildings and just blow it up, but it was because they woke up.
Right. So going back to the future children being used as collateral, I think that had something to do with you being age progressed to do a mission or.
Right.
Okay.
So I was taken 5 times, or handed over, however you want to look at that. And we can, again, like the men, we can do maybe 2 to 3 jumps before it starts to deteriorate the body. Depends on how long they keep you out there. And to do future jumps, they would sacrifice future children because they need the energy. So the whole sacrificing of humans and the purest energy is the child, right? Because it's like a brand new planet. It's raw soul material. So the fetus is also a raw soul material. So that future pregnancy would be sacrificed at that time in order for the woman to jump and be able to do what she was doing out there. So depending on how long you were out there for, it could have been 20 years, 5 years, 60 years, 100 years. There was no set scale depending on how many children you were.
And if I'm understanding this correctly, you said this would explain some of the miscarriages?
Yes. Yeah, because it was already a scheduled death. They sacrificed that in the future. It just came into your past timeline. And when you're here, you have the miscarriage.
Wow, that's deep. That's next level.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so you also mentioned how the cities are motherboards, basically like a circuit center. It's a motherboard,
right.
The battery, and they're like constantly sucking the life force out of us. Can you explain a little bit on your experience with that?
Yes. So when you are flying in a plane and you look down and you see all the squares and stuff, so the square is the negative side of the frequency, right? So when you look at ancient civilizations, everything's circular, correct? So there's the positive frequency. There was nothing square back in the day except for the pyramids, but that was when they started to learn about the negative frequency and how to shift everything into, using their power against the positive. So it was a disruption of the positive and the negative. And you'll only see like the round circulars around government buildings because they harness both positive and negative frequencies, which keeps them young and keeps them healthy. Whereas opposed, we're out here drowning because we're being constantly hit with negative frequencies. And they reversed engineered a lot of that technology to take our energy. But you have to do it in the circuit board framework. So all the roads and everything, again, used to be circular, but now everything's squared off.
Mhm.
So we're always constantly in a negative.
Right. And then also as individuals, we're targeted with this type of stuff right out of the gate from birth.
Mhm. Yep.
And
Hospitals are square. Your room is square.
right. I mean,
Yeah.
it's boxes. There's no
Boxes
energy
everywhere.
flow. Yeah.
Right.
There's no,
Right.
no energy flow anywhere.
Schools are prisons, basically. The mind control. You go through that.
So in the Army, you said you were a human intelligence analyst and a linguist. Obviously, we went into that, but you also mentioned a Delta Force assassin and a linguist interrogator. Is this something, are those in the programs, or was that Earth
They're
military?
in the programs. So when I was in AIT, there was an incident that one of our professors was out, and they had a gunner come in and show us all like different guns and stuff. And I was sitting there, and this he had like an M14, and he was giving us the history as to why, the good things about the M14, and then why we went to the M16. And he challenged people if they wanted to disassemble and reassemble it. And this kid jumps up, he's like, "Oh, my dad is Homeland Security. I can do it." Right. And I don't know why I was irritated by that, but I was like, I can do it. Right. Never even touched one before. And I did lie. I said that my grandfather had one and blah, 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 blah. But I really didn't. Had never seen one except for on TV, in the movies. So we're getting there, and you have, it's all laid out. You get to disassemble it, reassemble it, and they timed you. And I was like 3 seconds behind the other guy. So all these girls were like, "Oh my God, you're so amazing." And so in the barracks that night, they were still howling about it, because the other girls were like maybe 15, 12 minutes, 20 minutes. Some of them never finished it because they couldn't get certain parts in there. And I was like, I never touched one before. And I didn't realize the next day how crazy that was going to get. So I was dragged into the lieutenant's office for lying because I had a clearance. And I was like, well, I didn't know I was going to get in trouble. It's a small lie. And he's like, a small lie leads to a big lie. And it's like, oh my God. So, but he was mad because they had to call the FBI. Because when people show up with talents, I guess, the FBI regulates all that. So there was some, they weren't agents, they were just analysts. They came and did some tests on me, and they were just kind of simple childhood tests. But the Rubik's Cube, they have the round ones, the triangle ones, the octagonal ones. I mean, there's multiple Rubik's Cubes out there people don't know about. And I couldn't do a square one, but I can do the couple of the other ones. And then certain tests, certain eye tests, certain walking tests, even. It was weird. So they took me off base for 2 weeks and discovered that I had Asperger's with click coding intelligence. Now, they never told me what that was. I learned later in life what it was, but I have like a football field size of knowledge, but I can't access it unless I'm in real time situation, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So when that happened, I thought I was going to get medically discharged, but it opened some weird doors, like weird. I had no idea that they used people on the spectrum like they do, but the military has a whole different program for spectrum adults. And that's where the elite forces usually come in. So I was put into what was called the Special Skills Program in the beginning, which co-partnered with the Joint Special Operations. And in 2006, I was merged with Joint or Human Intel, Psych Intel, and Cyber Intel. And we were there's like 30 girls, and we were the first girls to put in Joint Special Operations. And that was a test. So I don't know if you guys remember the 2 girls that were being watched going through Navy SEALs, I think it was, or something. But that was the distraction. So nobody found out what we were doing over here. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah.
So with that going on, I was raised all the way up into the Great Skills Program, where you're considered an assassin and you have many different titles, many different MOSs. You're in different, elite unknown groups. My last titles were Joint Special Operations Area. So I was one soldier under a general, like a secret weapon, if you will. And again, there's a lot of things, a lot of different departments when you say assassin. I wasn't the one that would go out and just kill people. I was like the career ender, if you will. So I was the one they sent in when everybody else failed because I was 100%. Like I would find it. So that's kind of the different levels of assassins. Men are more likely to be like the ones you see on TV. There are women that do that. But I wouldn't, because I'm not God, and I don't feel like my job is to take life unless it's trying to take mine.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Makes perfect sense.
So then linguist interrogator, what would that be? Would that fall under the similar category? Where you interrogate these people?
I do, but I'm a different interrogator. So I'll give you an example. I was called in once to a superior court, and I can't say for what, but there was a serial killer put on trial, and they needed more evidence against him to give him the death sentence. So there was two analysts, myself and one other, that could try to get the information. And I said I didn't want to do it because if he walked, he's going to know my face, right? And I was like, he could hunt me down. I was like, I don't know anything about serial killers. I don't know what triggers them. I don't want to be one of them. So they promised if I was to get him to confess, then he would get the death sentence. So I was like, oh, okay. So I got in there and I sat there for 12 hours and I just stared at him. And it drove him crazy. And I had a notepad and I would just write some notes, just stare at him again. And he'd get angry. And then he started talking, like right before he snapped, he was like, I'm going to kill you. And he would name each and every person that he did and what he did to them. And then how he disposed of their bodies.
Wow.
And that was it. So certain people have, so the cryptological linguistic abilities, you can how would you describe that? Like on X-Men, the one where the girl could calm people down and manipulate their physical and change their whole persona. That's kind of what it is.
Okay. And it's all psychological in a way.
Correct.
Yeah. And you just got him to talk by staring at him. That's amazing.
Yeah. Staring at him.
That's amazing.
I mean, if you think about it, anybody can do it because nobody likes to be stared at. And they're like, why are you looking at me? And then all of a sudden their like inner demon comes out. It's funny.
Right. It's true. Yeah. I want to go back to that giant that you mentioned earlier that you saw in area 51 or 4, one of the
54.
two. 54. And where is 54 located in relation to area 51? Or can you disclose that?
Southern California.
Southern California. And there's a giant. Was this giant in stasis? What was the condition of this giant? Can you explain to us what you saw?
Oh, he wasn't in a good place. He wasn't going to live very long. So he wasn't in chains or anything. He was in a big underground room. I don't know if the room really had anything to do with the state he was in, but I do know the cage that was over him was described to us by one of the scientists that was down there was a reverse engineer net, pretty much, that was drawing his essence. So, and I mean, you could see this, it was almost ghost-like stuff going into a chamber, like a huge battery. And he just laid there. So I mean, I guess if your life force is being taken, you're not really going to fight if you're at a certain point of death. Like they kept him there to hold him on for a long time. Again, I don't know how long he had been there, but he had looked bad, like aged. And the Nephilims don't age because their other fathers were immortal. So for that to see that, and then I don't know if the color of his skin was because of the drawing the essence. I do know that there's blue giants, but I don't know if he was actually one of them or if this net was actually causing some kind of like frequency with certain energies and
like a
whatnot.
discoloration of the skin.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I do know he had white hair and the eyes were just, I mean, they were sad.
Human looking, just a large human.
Yeah, just a large human, but it was part of the Nephilim.
Like I think you mentioned like somewhere around 20 feet tall or something?
Yeah, he was, well, yeah, but he was like in a fetal position, so
That was hard
it's
to
really hard
do.
to determine. Yeah, but he was big,
And he was just being there.
just laid
They're
there
just
looking
sucking the
at
life
you
force out
like,
of him. Wow.
yeah.
That's horrible. And you have any idea? So it's one of the Nephilim, like how old
Yeah,
was
because we couldn't get close to them. Actually, when you get close to angels, you blow up.
it? Like spontaneously combust,
Yep.
like type of thing. Interesting. So he would be considered an angelic.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Right there in Southern California. Go figure.
Right. Well, they fly them in from various places. I don't know, wherever they find them.
Mhm.
But yeah, any creatures, I would say like Bigfoot, they have special abilities, energies, and stuff like that. So that's why they hide. Like all these, I mean, they want to be a part of the world, but they can't because our government snatches them up and then you
Mhm.
never see them again.
Right.
Yeah, because we're still controlled by these psychopaths and evil
Right.
groups. Yeah, but that's all getting cleaned up, going away now.
Do you have an opinion about the state of things right now? Like, is a lot of this stuff still taking place? Are there any forces combating this right now? Like, is there a cleanup process that we hear about?
I'm trying to get permission to actually tell people who's doing it. Because it's not the ones that you see that are claiming it, like, you know, the ones that are out there like, oh, I sent the orders for that, or oh, I did this. Nope.
Right.
That's not them. They're just watching it and they're like, oh yes, I'm gonna say that I did this. I put in those orders. And no,
Yeah.
I found out last year who it was. And so I'd asked the deep space handler that I have. I was like, hey, is this really true? And he was like, well, think about it. And I'm like, oh, totally makes sense.
But there is something happening. There is a cleanup process. So
there are different benevolent like races, ET races that are here helping.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
you're gonna be surprised if I'm allowed to say. I'll try to. If I can't say it, then I'll try to be strategic about it. But I do want to kind of put it into the video I want to create for that show in Vegas. But again, I don't know if I'm going to be allowed to expose who it is. Personally, I think it's important that we do because it has everything to do with us, everything. So I think it would flip the whole script. But it's on their time, unfortunately.
So
right.
This is ET's working with Earth military. Can you at least verify that?
ET's working with our military. Well, there we go again.
Like it's not necessarily like military, like okay, ETs, but they were.
It is the shadow government, yes.
Shadow government with Earthlings.
Earthlings, okay. Well, and hybrids, and yeah. See, I can't say it without giving it away, and then I could get in trouble because I don't have permission yet.
Well, we don't want to get you in trouble, but I think we get the idea.
The main point is because a lot of people that either don't believe in ETs or don't know about any of that stuff think it's only Earth humans and that's it that are involved. And then, you know, they talk about the white hats and the alliance and like,
and there's more than just the white hats. There's the blue hats, the gray hats, the red hats.
Right. There's different factions and different groups, but there are non-human entities.
Yes.
Whatever you want to call them, ETs, whatever you want to call them. They're not humans and they are here helping because they have abilities that we don't have, frankly, and that they can do a lot more to help that like you or I or like we can't, you know, unless we have access to highly advanced technology, which
it's in you already. You just have to remember how to use it.
It's in right. But we got to switch that on and remember exactly.
So I can tell you a lot of the deprogramming starts in your childhood. So regardless whether you had a really traumatic one, if you want to know what those memories look like, they're in your childhood. So that's why we block them out, is because that was too traumatic. You know, I can't, but in that trauma is your space programs.
Yes. And anyone, you mentioned anyone can be taken into these programs too. It's not just super soldiers and this, like you said, they need like any occupation.
They need everybody.
Any occupation that we can imagine, they need somebody to do it in these programs as well.
Yep. Doctors, medics, you know, people to make the uniforms. I mean, the super soldiers don't make their own uniforms. That's weird. That's like going into the army and making your own uniform. We might have some colorful stuff out there.
Right.
you know?
Right.
There's a
So
lot of different, there was a need, but, and I'll touch on that too, because there was a gal that had asked, um, Alex Collier if everybody on the planet had been taken, and he said no, but we have to realize what era he came from. They were the original whistleblowers. So in his time, no, not everybody was taken. If you had a talent, you were taken. You know what I mean? If you showed something, your handler was like, oh, I got something great over here. You guys got to check it out. But in our era, where the 50s, 60s, and 40-year-olds, we were pretty much, if you went to public school, you were taken because they were getting ready for this war. So if you look at the regular war, as on Earth is in heaven, right? So whatever they're doing in space, we had to do down here too. So everybody at some point was taken and scanned. If you were used is another thing. You were still taken.
Okay.
They had to scan everybody's soul, the DNA, and to see if you could be used in these programs to help fight the war we're in right now.
so
Does that make sense?
So everyone's soul is being monitored. They know who
Yes.
everyone is, what they're capable of.
Mhm.
We're targeted from birth, based on what our abilities are, or our
Right.
gifts are, I guess.
Yeah, you have soul keepers.
Soul keepers.
Yep.
That's interesting.
Well, look at Hades. What was he? He was a soul keeper. He was the keeper of the souls.
Right. I mean, I guess it makes sense. It's just things that you don't always think about. Like,
Right.
what do we expect? Our souls just like randomly floating around out there, and we're completely sovereign. Maybe, I don't know, but yeah.
No, because you could float into the wrong body, and that's where Down syndrome comes in. Down syndrome is really high level, like God, like souls, and like the soul keepers as a joke put them in lower genetic bodies. So that's why they can't communicate. They're literally still in space because their body is not kosher with their soul.
Yeah, and
that makes sense. Yeah.
There was I'm reading this book called Shining the Light. Aaron actually got it for me. It's
amazing.
It's about shadow government and stuff, but they talk about like in the early days how they were not necessarily cloning people, but growing people. And they said they started off with all men because men were easier to control than women. For some reason, they couldn't completely control or manipulate a woman for some reason. So
Right.
They would grow these men, and then the question was asked, well, like, how does the soul come to place? And they said they have like crystalline technology in place that allows part of the soul to enter the body, but it's fragmented, and the soul's constantly trying to enter the body, but it can't. It's like in space still. And it would like create this aggression within the individual, and they would be used as soldiers. They would like they
almost
were
like a drone, almost like a semi-mindless drone.
Yeah, they said they were basically grown, like you would see a clone grown in a vat until it was like age 20, and then it said it took about 6 months for it to learn how to eat and walk and talk and all that stuff, and then almost immediately it was already an aggressive being because of the environment and its missing soul component, and
Right.
they would be used in the programs. And they said it wasn't until years later they learned how to start doing it with women also, but for some reason they didn't have any luck with women.
Well, and they still didn't. I mean, look at Hillary Clinton. She was like jerking.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the soul was like, this isn't my body. It was freaking out. So yeah, the feminine is a little harder to control. So I can understand that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very hard to control.
They said, actually, now that I'm remembering, they said it had something to do with love, actually, like this component of love that like you couldn't, like that men like.
It's like the more connected to source you are.
Right.
I mean, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, and we're all connected to source. We were just, like I said, women were created in the uterus of a goddess. You guys were created from the earth. So you actually our chamber of love is different, but we were created from each other. So we get the connection. And what makes humans so special is that source gave his angelic DNA, or however you want to look at that, to create us. And that's where the jealousy happened between the jinn and humanity. So the jinn are actually the big problematic people on the planet that nobody really remembers. They think they're just genies in a bottle, but they're not.
Yeah, there's more to it than that, for sure.
A lot more.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a whole other story.
Right.
So are the jinn what people would consider demons essentially? Is that
Yeah.
those interchangeable
They're actually
terms?
the fallen. So here's the order of angels. So the jinn were created from the angelic bloodline. They have one set of wings, and they were created here. Still a very mythical, beings, and they were excited when the source said, "Hey, I want to create a new species, and you guys are going to nurture it." And they were like, "Yay!" Creation. They helped create us. So, but the difference between them and us was we were given genetics from creation. So they were not. They were given genetics from, I guess, what you would call the equivalency of God scientists, right? So the God creators, totally different level of God. And so they nurtured us, and God adored us more. So because we were a part of, or the creation, we were a part of that. So there was this rift. So they wanted to destroy it, kind of like the sibling factor, because we're all genetically connected. And it was like, why are they getting more attention and not me?
It's jealousy.
If you have multiple siblings, yeah. So that's where it all started. So some of them turned demonic. There are some good ones out there, and we call them our guardian angels. They're still angels. But they fell from grace here. They lived here like millions of years before us. And they were supposed to be like the big brother group. But it turned into, I'm going to destroy you group. Like, we're all fighting for the same thing, the love of creation.
I guess that's where the jealous God comes from.
And all the gods in the Old Testament that are wrathful and jealous and genocidal and all this stuff that aren't the true God, but it all gets called God. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's where that all comes from.
Speaking of playing God, what do you think is going on with this whole fake alien invasion, these UFOs getting shot down right now? I mean, we have our own opinions. Obviously, it's just a show we're watching, but what's your insight on that?
So in my opinion, and I'll call it my opinion, my understanding was it wasn't a fake invasion, because that's how Atlantis felt, was when the world got so out of hand with the technology, crossbreeding human and beast together. That was the ultimate sin that they did. And that's what we're doing right now, because you'll see these, we see the things where the fish with the human faces popping up and the pigs with the human faces, and they're just genetically throwing all human. That corrupts the souls, because the beast soul is different from the human soul, and it's almost a raping of the souls, if you will. So that is forbidden by creation. So when Atlantis finally fell, they were attacked by all the I guess aliens, if you want to say. They were destroyed that way. And then you had the other bad ones coming in to try to claim the citadel of Atlantis to get the crystal technology. So there's a lot of different sides to it, because it's what you see in perceptive, and there were so many different types of beings on the planet at the time. So what they saw and what the other ones saw were two different things. So we were getting to the point where that was going to happen again. We were going to be the next Atlantis. They were just going to wipe it out and start all over again.
So what are these craft that are being shot down, in your opinion? Blue beam technology, is that propaganda we're seeing, or is this actual threat?
I think it's the good. So the deep space program has those crafts with humans in it. So it could be the shadow military trying to help expose everything to get people to wake up, because again, trauma is how people react. So what does that look like to get the rest of the world to wake up? I'm not sure. They're not going to have an invasion. If anything, it'll be a rescue mission, because we got past the 50%. So we're allowed to live. What it looks like for the people that can't wake up, I don't know.
So, okay. So you think it's like a chess move in a sense. Okay. Like, because they're shooting them down, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense.
Well,
like,
the fact that the media's reporting on it is alone, like, they're doing that on purpose.
They want us to know.
They want us to know they're shooting down, or there's these UFOs. being shot down all over the place. Because normally what does the media do when any UFO thing happens? They don't report on it. They ridicule people who do.
Right.
Yeah,
the
call it
story for what it
conspiracy
actually was.
theorists,
Yeah.
Right.
crazy
Oh, it was a weather balloon.
people.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was this.
So now,
Right. So they're saying, hey, it was an unknown object shot down. Hey, UFO guys.
Right.
Like, it's like, okay, what's the agenda here? Why are they? Yeah.
and that's what my question was. Well, for one news station actually did call it an alien invasion. They said, we can say
Yeah.
it. We can say it now. Alien invasion. That's how
we
they
can
said.
say it now.
And but here's the thing: if it's an unknown race, an unknown species coming from another place, showing up in our airspace, they're not just going to haphazardly shoot them down.
Right.
Like you have no idea what's going to come after that, what the repercussions would be for shooting down foreign invaders. So if they're shooting them down by quote conventional methods, it seems like they're putting on a show for us.
Well, they're not shooting them down with rockets and guns and primitive stuff.
Right.
Which is what people think of when you say shooting down. Like it would, if it is shooting down, it would be like a frequency weapon of some kind, or
Right. And if you
scalar
think
or
about
something.
it, these ships have a capability of cloaking themselves, even from our military crafts. So why aren't they cloaking themselves when these military crafts come up on them? Because they want to expose themselves.
Right.
You know, they're doing it over cities so that the majority of people are like, oh my God, we're being invaded, right?
Right.
Right.
And
So yeah, it could be a propaganda. It could be a mutual thing. Nobody knows until we're at those seats in Congress, you know, talking about how we're going to wake everybody up. But if I had to say we're in what state we're in, like state of mind, is we're in rehab. You know, you, me, and the other celestial team coming out trying to talk about everything. We've woken up from the mystical drugs of mind control, right? So we're awake, and our job is to help the other deep sleepers, and they're going to be coming off of these, you know, mind control drugs is really what it is. So everybody's in a state of rehab, and we're like the AA meeting, you know.
Great way to put it.
That's fantastic.
So we have to be empathetic about the people waking up, because I lost a lot of friends, and now I'm getting phone calls. They're like, Mary, oh my God, everything you said like 10 years ago. And I was like, I know, right?
Right.
Yep.
I'm like, I'm here for you. What do you want to know?
Mhm.
So, and it's slow, you know, it's, but it's getting there. The sleepers are waking up, but not everybody is going to be in a comfortable zone yet, because to them, it's still scary. So like the regular person with the addiction is going to run back to normal. You know, they don't want that yet. So it's one of those things like, hey, I'm here for you when you're ready. You know, I'll be the one to take you to rehab.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're in a state of rehab.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. And yeah, I noticed the same thing. People might have laughed at our early content in the early years of the podcast. They're probably listeners now. Some of them I know are some friends like, hey man, I've been listening and it's pretty good stuff, you know. Other people think we're still nuts. So it's gonna be a rocky road for a while, but we'll get there. And thank you for coming forward and sharing everything that you have. You're doing some important work. So we really appreciate that. And can you let people know about this event in Vegas you're speaking at?
Oh yeah, so it's September, I think between the 14th. I can send you guys a link if you want to add it on there. It's going to be big. I mean, James Rink will be there, Eisenhower, a lot of big names are going to be there. It's my first speaking, so I was like, really? Yay, you know. So of course, you know, first time I'm probably going to like, you know, bombshell it and be terrible, but
no,
I'll do my best.
Tell yourself that.
But yeah, I got some content. I actually have 10 years of content that I can come out with, but you know, how much of that can you throw into 1 hour is amazing. Right. So,
right. And if there's anything in particular that you feel like you want to start talking about or share in the future, let us know. You always have a stage here. You can come and come back anytime, and we can get into some deeper stuff if you'd like. So,
yeah, okay. Well, we can. Yeah, I just want to get that out there first, and because that's going to raise a lot of questions, regardless of what everybody else's information is. I don't know why I was chosen to do it. I think it's to help the deeper sleepers, because the real deep sleepers are the ones that did a lot of traumatic things. So they don't want to wake up. You know, they don't want to remember that. You know, they could have been the ones pulling people's bodies apart. You know, why I don't remember that.
Right.
Interesting. Interesting. I never thought about it that way.
Me neither. That makes sense though.
So there's got to be a lot of healing in that and understanding as to why it was them, why they were the ones doing it. And so the med beds from my end, the ones that can erase all that from your memory, you know, to allow you the life you were promised instead of the life that you had. That's kind of where I was kind of focusing on, not rushing everybody into waking up, because there'd be a lot of suicides. I mean, if people really think about the stuff that happened, it was awful. Awful.
And we're talking about waking up. We don't think about waking up to your own memories that you don't even know that you have, which would ultimately come along with like full disclosure, right? If we got something like that. So,
and even past life memories, and like other life memories.
Right. So you have full memory is like almost system overload.
It is. I had a brain aneurysm, and that was my kill switch, and I actually survived it. So, which I injected myself with some DNA, but that's what happens if you have too much coming in at once. Your brain is still a very sensitive tissue, and only so much information can be downloaded at once. And they purposefully put kill switches in our heads. So heart attacks, strokes, brain aneurysms, that's because we're downloading too fast. So slower the better. But
or they turn someone off who's talking or sharing sensitive information.
Right.
They activate the kill switch also.
Yep. And then they sent somebody after me after that, because now that my kill switch is gone inside my head, how are they going to kill me? They have to send somebody.
Right.
Well, just be careful out there. And
every day.
Thank you for being brave and coming forward and sharing everything. And
absolutely.
Like I said, anytime you're welcome back. Looking forward to the Vegas event, and good luck with that. And you're going to knock it out of the park. I know it. You can't go wrong when you get up there and just tell your story and share the truth. Like, you can't go wrong. Like, it's not like you did some report on a subject that you're not familiar with. Like, you're going up there and, you know, sharing your truth, and that's what we need. So,
and everybody's timelines are different, but I hope that I can put a perspective on maybe where we came from a long time ago and how we got to where we are today, and then where we're going to go. Because I have 700 years into the future, but that future might change. So,
right.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been great. We really appreciate you coming forward. And guys, we'll put the link for that event in Vegas in the comments or in the description. And the link for our events will be down there also. Grab a ticket, come hang out with us if you'd like. We'd love to see you guys there. It's going to be a lot of fun. And until next time, have a great evening and good night.
Good night.
There was a CIA director named William Colby who in the 1980s said, "We'll know our disinformation campaigns are successful when everything the American people believe is fake."
When we realize how powerful we are when we set our intentions, and we realize that we aren't just this, we are just these multi-dimensional light beings, and time is an illusion, and you know, everything's a perception. Then you can go forward and backwards and embody it and just pop out and go and do this work. We can do amazing things when we set the right intentions to do it.
And I said, this is us on this plane. You know, like that's what this is. We're going to the moon. And he said, this thing is a lot older than you think it is. And we've been going to the moon a long time. But I wrote on it, I knew that we went to the moon. And so I always knew there was a base on the moon from a young age.
And our DNA is a complex recording system of the history of the entire universe, the history, you know, of everything, that not just this timeline that we know, but multiple timelines of reality.
There are a total of 9 different categories of planets in the universe. We people on Earth, we are living on a category 1 planet, like elementary school students. And the Theobans, they are living on a category 9 planet, like college professors. So they have been really guiding us throughout history.
Joachim let us know that this facility under the Sandia Mountain is considered an information station for interstellar travelers coming to the planet. They tell us that their facility was retrofitted into the ancient tunnel system that already existed.
And as far as the bending of space-time continuum, I've had something like that happen. And what seemed like about a 5-minute encounter has been 4.5 hours of missing time. And I was completely conscious. And when you're dealing with a type 3, type 4, type 5 civilizations that can work with the different coexisting timelines, all bets are off, man.
You know, every time we have Bigfoot activity out there, we're having ETs and orbs and stuff like that. We have a lot of this stuff documented. As a matter of fact, I'm a member of 3 different teams, and I work with people from all over the country out in the field. And we actually have documented a portal, something that we consider to be a portal opening. And we sent 2 of our team members inside of it. And
Really?
They disappeared and then came back out.
I would suggest that we take it one step further and say humanity has never known who we are. We've always been in the thought control matrix. And one step further, perhaps we could say that we're in a consciously controlled state of hypnosis. In other words, are the thought control matrix creators constantly bombarding us with frequencies that keep us from being telepathic, that keep us from remembering who we are? And the thought control matrix was set up, and we have never known our potential, our power, our beauty, our incredible connection.
It makes no sense at all. There is no reason for it other than the programming that we've received for generations, because it's all about order. It's all about listen to your elders, listen to the teachers, listen to the adults, listen. And what that does is it dims the light of the child, and it makes them feel like they don't have a voice. And why that's designed that way by the dark side, and that's in the system, is so that they grow up and they just listen to, and they do what they're told, and they're good little boys and good little girls, and they lose their sense of self. They lose their north, their true north. Yeah. So many adults are walking around in this world, they don't know who they are.
So the planet itself is now beginning to split. It's beginning to divide again into a higher vibrational Earth and a lower vibrational Earth. And the race of man is dividing with it. And we're becoming less and less aware of one another. And over time, what will happen, and I don't know how long this will be, one world will have all higher vibrational beings on it, and the other one will all be third dimensional beings, and we will not perceive each other anymore.